Senator, who was here first? I don't have a list. Were you here first? Well, then why don't you take the floor, Senator Coons?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member, thank you, Mr. Deputy Secretary. I'm just going to lay out 6 principles and see if we agree, because I think we agree that these are core goals of U.S. foreign policy and the State Department, that we need a nimble and efficient and effective State Department to strengthen our place in the world, that we have to win a global tech competition with China on AI, 5G, quantum, that we have to counter PRC aggression in the South China Sea and beyond, that we have to bring home American citizens who are wrongfully detained, that we have to do everything in our power to stop Iran from building a nuclear weapon, and that we need to repel Russian aggression and bring about a just and lasting end to the war in Ukraine. Any disagreement with those as goals?
Not at all, sir.
Well, like the 3 other senators, I worked in the private sector of manufacturing. I was a county executive. I led reorganizations. And I will tell you, I am much less concerned about the org chart. A cleaner, more concise org chart makes general sense. I have signed up to work with Senator Hagerty on a bipartisan State Department reform and reorganization, which may end up being less relevant after some of these actions. But the thing I focus on the most is talent and skills, less than title and function. And my concern about the RIF that you've led, that has pushed 1,300 people out the door, is that the way it was done has cost us huge talent. For example, these RIFs, as I have understood it from folks inside the department, were not, in fact, wide open competitions based on skill and talent. You rewrote the Foreign Service Manual, came up with hundreds of competition boxes, and put a very small number of people competing against each other, really fixed based on where they were serving on May 29th, and in many cases, forcing them to compete against one other person. As you heard from the ranking member, some of the concerns I've got about the skills and talent that just went out the door are the top of the list for me. Your top experts on AI, quantum, 5G, and cyber. The folks from the Bureau of Cyberspace and Digital Policy who were working on preventing proliferation to China walked out the door. Staff from the Bureau of East Asian Pacific Affairs who craft our efforts to push back on PRC aggression in the South China Sea walked out the door. The staff who work with our ASEAN partners walked out the door right after Secretary Rubio had attended a summit of ASEAN. And we both agree that we care about ending the risk of Iran getting a nuclear weapon, yet you literally just fired department experts on nuclear proliferation, including experts with decades of expertise on Iran's nuclear weapons program. Ending Russia's invasion of Ukraine, yet the intelligence analysts with decades of experience on Russia and Ukraine walked out the door. Claiming that you've consolidated offices in the interests of efficiency, I think misses the point that this competition was done in a sloppy, rushed way that has cost us decades of relevant critical experience. So to this point, and I urged the other deputy secretary and the secretary to consider this point, you should facilitate a more robust competitive process for allowing reassignment of the RIFT employees who are on administrative leave at the moment. I think you have lost key and essential skills and talents from within the ranks of our Foreign Service. And the chairman and the ranking member recognized in their previous comments, these are dedicated, loyal, career professionals who bring to their service overseas every day rivers of talent. I recognize you're trying to clean up the wire chart and close down some of the single issue offices. I'm not quibbling over that. What I am disagreeing with vigorously is the way this rushed process led to folks with decades of relevant senior experience in technical areas and intelligence areas and operational areas that are not easily repeated. Will you consider allowing for a broader re-competition amongst and between those who've been RIFed and the thousands of jobs that remain open or unfilled?
So thank you for that question, Senator. So the RIF process, as established under law and regulation, does allow for, so the bump and retreat that I described, where you compete people against, skills, experience, tenure, language, whatever. That same process works in reverse when there are openings that people can apply for. So as there are openings available for people to be considered for, they can certainly, no one is prevented from necessarily coming back into the department if there's a position that is open and being competitively hired for.
So while folks are on administrative leave following Friday's RIF of about 1,300 people, they can compete to return to service for open positions.
Yes, the caveat being there is a government-wide hiring freeze right now.
Okay, so no. The answer is no.
For the time being.
Let me just close with two other observations. China is expanding their diplomatic footprint and engagement around the world. Our global competition with China is something I've heard every member of this committee talk about, including our secretary, when he served on this committee. You are proposing a budget cut of 50% to the U.S. State Department. I don't think that's wise. I don't think we can afford it. I don't support it. I frankly think finding efficiencies, always a good thing. Finding efficiencies that cost skill, talent, and ability, not a good thing. Slashing this department in half in the middle of a critical competition globally, at the same time we walk away from aid, a horrible idea. Last, trade, not aid. I've repeated that line here when I helped build the Development Finance Corporation in a bipartisan way, a bill that President Trump signed into law in his first term. Trade is often preferable to aid. But trade, when our president is chaotically leading a hard-to-decipher tariff fight with not just our adversaries but our allies, means that trade, as a promise of how we're going to extend our engagement and influence in the world, is likely to fail. We should not cut this department in half. We should not walk out the door its most talented people, and we should not replace foreign aid with the unlikely to succeed promise of trade when we don't seem to have a clear and consistent strategy for how to use that trade. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.